name is Bill Jaeger, and I'm a professor in the Department of Applied Economics at Oregon State University. I'm interested in climate change both because it's clearly one of the largest challenges humanity has ever faced, and because economics is central to understanding both the problem and the solution. So some of my work involves looking at a couple of things that might help overcome this huge obstacle. First, in the case of a carbon tax, the revenues can be used in a way that make the policy less costly overall and more agreeable to lots of people. Some of my research and that of other economists indicate that if the revenues are used to finance reductions in pre-existing taxes, there can be an extra benefit, a so-called double dividend. For example, if people expect to pay $100 in carbon taxes, but then they will also see an income tax reduction on average of $100, they may be more willing to support the policy. Most Americans aren't familiar with the economic models that suggest that fairly aggressive climate change policy could reduce emissions and stabilize the climate at a cost of less than 1% of income, something that over a period of years, as a nation, or on average, we wouldn't even notice. So looking at climate change from a big picture perspective, it seems pretty clear that we have the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and actually stabilize the climate, and at a reasonable cost. The technologies and the policy tools exist. The problem of climate change is people. How do we get people to agree to actually make changes? How do we find support to implement collective action? But a policy like a carbon tax in the US will impose costs right away, but most of the benefits occur decades in the future, and in fact, most of the benefits accrue to people in other countries. Legal scholars are making the case that our laws or constitutions can and should be interpreted as giving us the right to a stable climate. Now, if that became the law in the US or in other countries, then reducing emissions would become a law enforcement question rather than a legislative question. For both of these issues, communicating the important economic ideas behind them is essential. And so some of what economists need to do is to find better ways to explain these ideas to the public and to decision makers. We need the population, we need people to be better informed about the science and about the economics. I think the scientists have been doing a good job of bringing the science out into the open, despite people who would like to deny that science. I think economists need to do more to point out just how inexpensive it could be to aggressively reduce our carbon emissions. From the general public perspective, I think we have to recognize that it's a moral and ethical issue, that it has to be framed as, how do you want your children and grandchildren to think about you and what you did to help protect the planet from the kinds of changes that could be catastrophic over the next few decades?